Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at LeetCode Code question number 344. It is an easy. This question is to reverse a string. Now, we're going to look at different methods of solving this. This is a question that is easy, although there's different ways to solve it. So it does probably, display your different ways of working with different time and space complexities. This question is centered around arrays or string manipulation, and it also has the concept of two pointers. So it will vary also across languages simply because of the either mutability or inimmutability of strings, such as Java strings are immutable. In this case, we'll be looking at JavaScript where strings are also immutable, and we'll see how that plays into the various solutions. So off the bat, we can look at the first solution. And again, anytime you get these kinds of questions in a coding interview, it's best to repeat the question, make sure you understand it. It's really important not just to jump into coding, but really probably sit down and try to solve it on paper or draw it out and explain it verbally to the interviewer. So in this case, what we can do is let's take a look at the most simple solution. Now, of course, we could look at the built-in methods in our language of choice. In this case, we're using JavaScript. So that would just be a matter of using the built-in methods, which is, we can see here, we've got reverse, we've got our string. In this case, we are assuming that we're receiving a string. In the case of LeetCode, actually the question on LeetCode, the input is an array, and there's a reason for that that we'll get to, but it's really because of the immutability of strings. So anytime you're having to do anything with a string, a lot of times you're having to actually convert it into an array and then convert it back into an array using the built-in methods. So in this case, we'll say we're going to split the string. Then we're just going to do a reverse, and then we simply join our string back. And we can go ahead and just take a look at what that would look like. So if we have hello, let's go ahead and run this. Reverse s.split, reverse join. What are we missing here? Oh, what am I doing? Okay, yeah. Just, I completely just logged out hello. Okay, so now we should see our string being reversed. Let's see. Oh, did we forget to return? Okay, so I think this should work. There we go. We have our string reversed, and this is, I think the problem with this is that in an interview, you probably could do this, but I think the interviewer is looking for other solutions. So let's go ahead, and it's always good to ask too, be like, hey, I think you could explain, like, I could use the built-in methods. And maybe the interview would be fine with that, but I think they just want to see, it's not always about arriving at the correct solution, but it's just about seeing what, your thought process is. But this is just a good solution to be aware of. And in terms of complexity, this will give us a time complexity of big O of n, because the split and join methods, they will only operate once on the input, which is our string. And because we're not using any additional space, our space will also be big O of n, or linear time. So now, let's take a look at the next case in terms of, we have a next solution which will be using extra space. This is really going to be very terse in terms of the amount of code that we're writing, but we're going to see there's some issues with it in a bit. So we can say reverse, we've got our string, and then here we're assuming that we're receiving a string. We're going to receive an array, although we could convert it to an array just like we did in our last solution. But for this example, let's just imagine that we want to preserve it as a string, and then we want to create another string. And we're basically what we're going to do is we're going to append that from the end of the input string to our output variable. And really what that means is we're going to, I have an example here, and what we're going to do is we're literally just going to, let's see if this works. Yeah, we're going to start from the end, and we're literally going to just append character by character. So we're going to append this O, we're going to go loop backwards, append this L, and so on and so forth, and continue in that with that method. So let's go ahead and we are going to loop backwards. So we'll take the length of our string -1, so that will put us in the last element. We're going to loop until I is greater than or equal to 0. Since we're starting at the last index, our value of I will be greater than 0. And then we'll go ahead and just decrement our iterator. So from here, it's really simple. We can just say output equals the character that we are starting with, or the one we want to append first. And then simply we can return our output. Now, let's see what we've got. Reverse, and then we want to reverse hello. Again, we're using a string. We could convert it to an array, but for this, we're just going to use our input string. So we can see that it works. It's a very simple solution. You could bring this up in an interview as a brute force solution and then start to talk about the time and space complexity, because there are some glaring issues with this. And really, that has to do with the time complexity. One thing to note here is that we are using a string. Strings are immutable in JavaScript, which means whenever we run this output and we append, literally what it's doing is, because it can't modify the string because they're immutable, it's creating, for every single loop, it's creating a new string and appending one by one. So that's really the bottleneck. And what that leads into is we have a time complexity of big O of n squared. Our space, we are using we're using additional space, which is our output, and that will really just be, that will grow with in terms of the input. So it's really, it's linear. So where n would be the length of the input string. So the longer the string, the more our space grows in a constant, or sorry, linear fashion. Constant would be an O of 1. So we've got this O of n squared. It's not the best solution. It's really, I think we can optimize it a bit more. And yeah, it just has to do with the immutability of strings. So let's go ahead and take a look at a better solution. Go ahead and we'll remove this. And we'll take a moment to look at our final solution, which, if the interview doesn't allow you to use any built-in methods like our split reverse join methods, or if we can't use extra space because of the O of n squared constraint. Now that is, again, that is language specific. Like Java has immutable strings, JavaScript, I believe Python. There are other languages that maybe don't have immutable strings, and you could probably get away with looping backwards and just appending the strings with extra space. But what we can do is, I think we can come up with a solution where we have a linear runtime. Part of that is going to involve us, what we're going to do is we're going to modify the string in place. We're not going to use any additional space. Again, this might be a constraint your interviewer may give you. They may say, hey, I don't want you to use another variable or additional space. I want you to do it in place, which really just means reverse it without any additional data structures or variables. And we just have to modify the input. This is also also the constraint that LeetCode gives you. So just to kind of break down and visualize our solution, we're starting with the input that LeetCode gives you is an array of letters. However, we could also accommodate for receiving a string where we would make sure to split the string. So we'll go ahead and we'll code up both solutions. But for now, just to visualize it, what we're going to do is we're going to loop forward through the letters. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually, when we loop, we're going to divide the length of the string by 2. So what we do is we end up looping just kind of like halfway. Because it's odd, we go up to the middle element. But if we had an even number, it would basically go up to the middle element, preserving the character in the middle or letter. But so yeah, we're going to actually what we're going to do is it's going to loop halfway, and we're going to save these letters in a temporary variable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the end. We're going to actually grab, you can see where we're going to grab these letters here, and we're going to attach them to the front of the array. So the back of our array will become the front, or the front section. We're going to copy it over. So when we get to that step in our loop, our array will actually look like this. It will look, the back portion will basically just be kind of like a mirror, or I'm sorry, the front portion will really just be like a mirror of the back pointer or portion of our array. Next, because we've saved this into a temporary variable, we're going to actually take it and we're going to iterate, and we're going to then plop it onto the back portion of our array. So our final output should be this array here. So let's go ahead, and hopefully that makes sense, and we can go ahead and take a look at our solution. So again, we're receiving an array of letters. We're not using any additional space, so we're going to just start iterating forwards through the string. So length. Now we're going to take our string copy, and this will copy this front portion. Yeah, so first we're going to copy this front portion here, and then we're going to say, we can call this like end pointer, and this is going to be the length. We're going to go way back. We're going to start the last index, and then we're going to throw in -1 minus I. The reason we're doing that is because we want to grab this end portion. We want to start here. Basically what we're doing is we're starting here with the -1, and then on each iteration we're backtracking, or we're not backtracking, but we're basically just moving backwards in our array. And then literally once we have those two variables, we can just say that the front of our array, or the starting portion, will be, we're going to copy over our end pointer, and then we're going to say the end pointer is going to get our string copy. And so effectively, this should move our back portion to the front, and then our temporary variable storing the first 3 characters will then be attached to the back of our array, and effectively, hopefully we've reversed our string without additional space. And yeah, without using a string, which will incur that additional runtime. So we want to return our string. And let's see if we've got what we're looking for. let's see, reverse string. We have made a mistake here where we're looping all the way through. So it's literally just kind of, it's rerunning and reconstructing the string as hello. What we want is we want to divide by 2, so it only moves halfway through the string. Otherwise, it's moving, it's literally reversing the string and then reversing it back. So in this case, that should fix our issue. Let's see, well, I is less than s dot length divided by 2. Length is spelled correctly. End pointer. What are we missing here? String dot length. That's odd. Oh, okay. Now, this is the issue. We're inputting a string here. So actually, if we, here we go. Let's fix this. And then we'll come back to our string. But I was assuming when I was coding this, I was assuming we had an array. So if we say, whoops, we say hello. All right, so hello. Yeah, now we got, it's actually reversing the array. Now the issue was string. So let's go back to string and see why it wasn't working. And the reason it's not working is because, as we mentioned at the very start of our lesson here, strings are immutable. So what does that really mean? It means that the input string really cannot be changed. It's immutable. So if we wanted to accept a string as input, we could do something like this. We could say split. And then we could, in theory, say join. Now we're going to try this. It's not going to work, and we're actually going to see why in a moment. But let's reverse this. Reverse. And what is it saying here? Join. Okay, yeah. So it's complaining because this split function will actually return a new string. So we're not even operating on this string at this point. We're literally like, this method is being called on still a string. So in order to get this to work, all we need to do is we just need to say s equals s dot split. Essentially what that will do is it will store the result of the split operation, since split will return a new value. And then we can go ahead and run this and it should work. S dot join. Let's see if we could do something like, actually, oh, okay. So yeah, this will split, and then I think the join's not working because, do we just need to include a space? Okay, yeah. So we could have it return an array from our split operation or just the actual string. But in essence, this is the rundown of the different solutions that are good to be aware of. Always ask your interviewer what would be preferred, if you can use built-in methods, if there's any constraints with using extra space. And yeah, this is a fun question. Usually it's an easy question, so it could be given as a warm-up, but just good to know. Thanks a lot for stopping by.